Well, everyone, you probably know by now, I'm Matt Kinsman. I'm the head of content and programming at ABM, and I'd like to welcome you to What B2B Brands Want From You. And this should be a panel that fills the room because we've got customers. The biggest challenge with an event like this, you get publishers together or media information providers or whatever we're calling ourselves today, is that you're talking to each other. That's great for best practices, but are you necessarily talking to your clients? Or are you figuring out what the marketplace wants? And that's really what we're going to get into today. I'd like this to be a discussion between our panelists and the audience. We've got an intimate group here, so please, this isn't meant for them to talk just to you. We want you to be able to talk to them and really find some common ground with some things that you guys can do together. Our panelists include Marc Green, who's the Director of Marketing Communications with Ingredion, Inc., and Robert Struble, Manager of Brand and Marketing Communications with PPG Industries. Guys, to start off, I was hoping you could just talk a little bit more about yourselves, specifically about your brand, your own roles, and then historically, what's your relationship been with B2B media as a marketing vehicle? Robert, let's start off with you.
Okay, PPG Industries is a global paint, coatings, glass, and specialty products manufacturer. We have 150 manufacturing locations around the world. Our primary segments are aerospace, automotive, marine, and architectural building products. Personally, I'm closest to the architectural building products. I lead the cross-business unit team for that, branding and communications, and but have consulted with all those other segments. I have roughly 27 years of B2B advertising and branding experience with PPG and 2 other companies. Our brands generally are we trade as PPG or some sub-brands. Some of the residential, some of the consumer products that you might recognize would be Pittsburgh Paints, Porter Paints, Glidden, Olympic Paints. Those are eventually going to merge under a corporate brand as they've bought more and more paint companies and consolidated in that area.
Very good. Marc, how about you?
Marc Green. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications North America for Ingredion Incorporated. Basically, I control more than half the global spend because we have the most sophisticated marketing communications organization in our company. Ingredion is a name that doesn't fall trippingly off the tongue. We're a leading food ingredients brand. Ingredion is the result of corn products, a leading producer of high fructose corn syrup and other sweeteners, acquiring National Starch, the leading global brand in texturizing products. So you may not know us, but anytime you reach for a product on the shelf in your kitchens, there's probably something of ours in your package.
All right, very good. Guys, one thing that we hear on the publisher side over and over again is that there's so many different people on the brand side. Typically, there's so many different people on the brand side with different responsibilities. Can you talk a little bit about your marketing priorities? Specifically, what are you trying to accomplish? This is primarily around branding. Is this lead gen? How is this really influencing your spending decisions? You guys had mentioned specification selling in one of our previous conversations. What do you mean by that?
For us, we really spend very little of our marketing dollar or effort trying to sell to our immediate customers. Ultimately, what we're seeking to do is to go down the channel to the end user or the specifier to try to create channel pull through our customers. And the easiest example of that would be we invest in promoting to architects so they'll write specifications for our products that then the general contractor and their subcontractors will buy from our customers. So we're not really interested. We can't track direct sales to our marketing spend, which is a real challenge for us when we're trying to justify marketing budgets of all things. But it's the complexity is that there we go. The complexity is that our customers sometimes are withhold information coming back through the channel. So there's always a sort of a disconnect we have to manage in this idea of spec selling.
For us, it's a little bit different because we are selling to our direct customer, not necessarily the person making the purchasing decision. We're selling primarily to what's called the R&D function within processed foods, and that's somebody called a food scientist or food formulator. They get to spec in the ingredient, and hopefully we make a convincing enough case that they're going to spec in our ingredient over a competitor. Then, of course, it always moves to procurement, and they want to beat us up and see if they can get a lower price. But for us, specifying means really when the product's being developed, we want to be there literally on the ground floor, because in many cases, something like some of the trends today, like gluten-free foods, what we call clean label, natural is a term no one wants to use anymore, but foods without additives, those require a high degree of formulation skill from the ground up. It's nothing you can take those ingredients and just do a direct substitution. So for us, we want to be in there as soon as they're thinking about a new product in these areas.
So how's that actually influencing your spending decisions? You want to be right in there. What does that mean in terms of specific vehicles? What does that mean in terms of the types of publishers, or at least the types of marketing platforms that you're looking at?
So for us, we got into online advertising in 2007, which may sound late, but in our business, we were probably first. And I made the decision that I didn't want to be homepage banners or anything general. I wanted to be on the pages of the magazines where there was current and active editorial on the subjects that were near and dear to us. So we sponsor pages, we sponsor sections of our media partners' websites where the key issues are being discussed. And that way, when someone who is formulating for gluten-free or formulating for clean label, or today non-GM, we have a huge non-genetically modified portfolio, we want to be on those pages when their readers are hitting that content.
Our mission is probably more, because we're trying to promote downstream, it's more about branding and education than lead generation.
Okay, very good. So our audience knows where you guys are coming from. Can you talk about how you guys are evaluated internally as marketers? We've talked to brands before, and there seems to be a real shift to metrics. Everything's being driven by very specific metrics. How are you guys evaluated internally? Marc, let's start with you on that.
Well, because my crew controls the whole marketing communication process, and all the the marketing managers have to go through us, we really can see and measure just about anything. So for us, it's with our PR, it's share of voice. Our PR manager makes sure that we're getting more than our share of coverage on the editorial side. We're looking at page visits, we're looking at click-through rates, we're looking at registered downloads, and then those are the process metrics. And then we're not where we should be with Salesforce.com, but taking those actions through Salesforce and then seeing if there are actually projects triggered and if there's money in those projects. So we're really getting close to truly doing the ROI we need to keep our programs alive and growing. Not quite there yet.
I wish I could be more, as optimistic as Marc, because, at the end of the day, we're all evaluated by sales. Marketing function is really about selling more stuff to more people for more money. And so revenue and earnings are how we're evaluated. The problem is that while we can show them a mountain of metrics about our web activity and about click-through rates and about engagement rates, at the end of the day, the C-suite doesn't really care about that. They really want to know, what they're earning or how that's going to improve their earnings. And, because we aren't able to connect our success with downstream specifiers to actual sales, we really are relying on some barometers or leading indicators. Now, as a business, the four businesses that really do this kind of have a set of barometers that everybody agrees these are important things. We need to see them improve, but they are not connected to revenue, and that's the thing that that gets talked about, in every executive's weekly meeting. We use this mountain of metrics to make sure that we're investing in the right places, that we're putting our messages where they're reaping the best result, and that they're honed and tuned to the, to engage the audience. So we use the metrics to manage the marketing process. I suspect you're the same.
Oh, yeah.
We talked a little bit about how you guys are evaluated internally. Let's talk a little bit about publishers, both how publishers are really attempting to evaluate themselves, and then in turn their story to customers like you, and what's the bottom line evaluation that you're putting on marketers. There's a real push right now in the media industry to kind of change metrics, to go from something like time spent to this idea of engagement, which is a little amorphous. I mean, what's your take on that? Is something like that useful or not?
Well, unfortunately, in our area, in the world of food processing, the media partners are, well, I won't say they're inept. That's not fair. But they're not investing in the kind of data that Penton was talking about, that I think you're alluding to. And here's the problem: is that believe it or not, after being in online media now for more than 7 years, our company is still the only one doing it, quote unquote, right, with unique landing pages and targeted e-blasts. And because we have a fairly sophisticated program, I'm demanding more and more of our media partners. The problem, and since almost all of them are family-owned businesses, they're not willing to make the investment just because one advertiser wants to do something. They know it's the right thing to do, and there's someone in the audience who took a leap of faith about 7 years ago and knew it was the right thing to do, and it's paying off for his company, small company. But we're just not seeing it with our media partners, and so my job is either to make my competitors smarter or just try to do what I can do with relatively limited resources.
Well, let's follow up.
There's a question there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you just speak more specifically about what you'd like them to do?
All right, so where I said Karen before, Joanne was showing how she can track, through reverse IP lookup and all that, where the readers are going, and offer that data back to the advertisers and programs, and then also do lead nurture or push content. That's why I asked the question if you were in the last session. None of our media partners have invested in that technology. None of them have responsive websites because none of them have mobile. As a matter of fact, I have the only mobile website in my space, and I pushed to get it done before an important trade show because our important media partner said, oh, we're going mobile. Great. And then when I get ready, we're going to do an app. I said, where's your mobile website? No, we're going to do an app. I said, and they're telling me about the impressions and this and this. I said, I can generate that on my own. I mean, I'm trying to remember the data. I have 2,500 unique visitors every week. I have 200,000 pages viewed every month. I mean, this is what some of our media partners are offering. So it's very frustrating because I'm pushed to do more and more digital. And this year is the first time we crossed the barrier. We're doing 53% online, but a huge piece of that is with webinars.
Our business units, I think one of the probably what makes publishers crazy is our business units define engagement differently. They use different metrics to roll into some kind of an amalgamated measure. So we're not always talking about the same thing. And sometimes, honestly, we don't necessarily trust the information that we're getting. The number of clicks that exit your site don't match up with what we're seeing coming in on our end. And so I think that when we evaluate the publishers, one of the things we try to do is track them into our site and see where they go. We have different page ratings. So if they hit a sample order page, it registers a much higher rating. And so then we're able to compare what kinds of users each publisher is serving up and compare those against each other. But we also do some of our own surveys of our audiences to understand who they're using. And honestly, what we find is that even when we have two very strong publishers in one particular arena, what we find is they deliver different kinds of people. And it's not that one may be more valuable than the other, but we have one, for example, in architecture that delivers a higher volume of users that are very good. Then we have another that delivers a smaller number of users that are excellent. And so what we find is that your editorial is attracting different kinds of readers. And that's a good thing, because it means I can't pick one of you and starve the other. I really need both of you. And so that's one of the things that I like to see from publishers also. You know how some of the print publishers still do like redex studies of their ads, so I can look and see how my ad scored against my competitive set. That's interesting, and that's fine. We do our own research that I value more highly, but what I like to see is your editorial product and how your editorial product is engaging your readers and your users. Because at the end of the day, and I tell my media buyers this, we're not buying pages, we're not buying magazines, we're buying an audience. And the degree to which you can communicate effectively and deliver insight to your audiences, that's what I want. That's what I want to buy. So when I see these redex scores this redex cover editorial, I may be mixing it up, but regardless, when I see scores that show me that you understand your audience and that your audience is engaged in your editorial, that to me is golden.
Any follow-up from the audience on that? Marc, I want to go back to what you said. You said your overall budget is now 53% online. Can you talk a little more specifically about some of the components of that? Targeted messaging, deep content, what's really working? You said you're doing a lot with webinars.
Yes and yes.
Beyond webinars, what's working and why?
All right, so our ads are, deep content. As a matter of fact, that's the name of one of the presentations I've done to groups like this. Yeah, all of our online advertising, virtually all of it, is about deep content, being highly engaged in the editorial that affects us. So we're doing that. Some of our media partners have deep content products that actually generate leads, in a sense. So we're able to, at least if they're not in our database, at least reach them one time with an offer for more content. Webinars have really taken off. The last two webinars we did, we set records for both publishers, because we pick what we think is really compelling product, and our people really know how to deliver content without doing commercials. There's a conference organizer I work very closely with, and he really dreads, even if it's the best source of content, he really dreads having manufacturers in his various panels, because most people don't know how to turn off that commercial and deliver the information objectively. Thank goodness all of our people, whether engaged in our agricultural business or they're technical people, they're marketers, they really know, and maybe I guess it's subliminal that they've been trained right, not to do a commercial but to deliver content. So webinars are creating unbelievable numbers of leads for us, and of course we can market back to those people.
Rob, are there other specific components that Marc didn't mention that are really working for you?
No, really content-driven placements do so much more for us. We don't really rely on publisher-created content, because remember I said our goals are really educational, but most of our information is very proprietary, and I don't think that, first of all, there's a big learning curve that we don't necessarily want to go through. Our agencies have really become the content experts. But also, I think the publishers, at least in the aerospace, automotive, and architectural businesses, really aren't interested in pushing branded content. And I think that they're seeking a little higher degree of credibility with their readers and don't get into proprietary information too often, and it just doesn't work for us. That's just what we've seen.
So you're not interested in content marketing or something like native advertising?
No, but what we find is association with certain types of content on their sites that as they do reviews of of different practices, that those are excellent places for us to find our audience, because that's what the audience is going to them for.
I just want to add a thought. One of our media partners for which we do sponsored webinars, I've really asked them to tone down the sponsorship piece of it. And when you go on the registration page, our logo is bigger than theirs, and that's not what I want. I want that potential third-party endorsement by the website or the publisher. So, because we want to be seen as delivering somewhat objective content, not, a 45-minute commercial.
I've got a question for our publishers, our media companies in the audience. Is that what you're hearing from brands as well? Because this is the second time that we've heard about brands wanting to be next to strong content, not necessarily owning content. And I think out in the trenches, is that what you're actually hearing as well? Or are brands a little more insistent on what they want to do?
I think it varies. Obviously, the brands are paying for placement, and they don't want their message or their logo or their image to get lost in content either. So I think that would vary by the brand itself. I think in some cases the pendulum is the other way, in which we're not comfortable with giving too much prominence to a brand because we think that our content integrity might suffer as well. So,
And that's no good for us either.
All right, very good. Guys, we just had a session on audience data. We saw what Penton was doing, moving towards in terms of some very sophisticated solutions as far as harnessing their audience data, identifying customers, tailoring messaging for those customers. Rob, you said that publishers really sit on a gold mine with audience data, and that's exceptionally valuable. Tell us a little bit more about that. What would you like to see? What would help you? And what are you seeing right now for publishers?
Well, if you were in this last session, I mean, what they described was kind of like the perfect future state. I can tell you that in all of our markets, we're not close to anything like that. I mean, we're not nearly that sophisticated. But we do recognize that our publishing partners have a warehouse of information about how users traffic their websites, where they go, what they look at. You know the kinds of interests they have. You've collected information from registrations at one point or another. Now, unfortunately, mining all of that and putting it together isn't always easy. Even beyond that, though, when they talked about these lead nurturing, we're looking at developing our own lead nurturing kinds of things to take the leads that we get from you. We don't really call them leads because they're unqualified, but putting them through sort of an automated process with Marketo. But there's no reason that you couldn't do that and deliver that to us. And the other thing is, there's third-party databases. The construction industry, for example, both commercial and residential construction in the U.S., there's some wonderful databases that the publishers own. McGraw-Hill and Reed Construction, Hanley Wood has a connection with also the NAHB, the home builders. And so they can connect down to that zip code level about who's involved in certain kinds of projects, how big the projects are, how many windows they have, things like that, that if I could get a lead that was that smart, it would be worth a lot more to me. The problem is I don't know how much more, and you're probably not going to build it until you know how much you can get paid for it. And so we're kind of in this this standoff that, we're afraid to invest in it before we see it, and it's hard for you to invest in building it until you've got people willing to buy it. And I understand that. I think that if we work together, there's got to be some way we can solve some of these information problems, but all the tools are there, we just haven't connected them.
You mentioned something interesting just in terms of pricing, and I'd like to dive into that conversation right now. I think when we talk about publisher and advertiser, when you talk pricing, it's usually come at from a fairly antagonistic viewpoint. Publishers say, oh, we get beat up. Advertisers say, well, what are you giving me that's worthwhile? What are you guys really willing to pay for? I mean, we've talked about data, we've talked about deep content placements. What are you willing to pay for, and how does that compare to what you're paying for now? You're paying for straight up banners, straight up print ads. What are you willing to go for some of these more sophisticated solutions?
Well, I'm not going to say a totally open pocketbook, but I am ready to shell out whatever is necessary for the publisher in our space who will get to some degree of personalization or push content. And I've told them, again, because I'm a lone voice in the wilderness, there isn't receptivity. They understand there's more money to be made when you have a closer connection with the reader than when you have just a general connection. And yet, because they don't see the potential revenue stream, they don't even know how to price it. So, for example, if I'm, pick a number, whatever you want, whatever CPM you want for in our case, targeted placements, I would go double, triple, quadruple 10 times if it was somehow highly personalized content. I've tried to set a scenario that, that if someone's a regular visitor to, food manufacturing or foodprocessing.com or whatever, if they had that little corner on the right that said myfoodmanufacturer.com, and it was all the content that I was interested in. So it's like, welcome back, Marc, here's the latest, on the tooth subjects. I mean, that kind of medium would be worth a multiple compared to current.
And you're talking about editorial content, not branded content, sorry about that.
Sure.
Right,
Oh,
yeah,
please.
so I'm just saying, so, being able to either aggregate or push personalized content. So they know through, through tracking that this person, I'll use the subjects that I talked about before, we know this visitor is interested in gluten-free, or this visitor is interested in clean label, or this one is interested in new dressing or sauces formulations. If they could push their latest content or aggregate it or put it in some nice convenient form, their content. Yeah, I always want to be, even though I've been in advertising, how many years? I think the first ad I placed was on a tablet, but I had the brand for Moses when he brought the tablets down from the mount. It wasn't an iPad. I've been in advertising for a long, long time, but I was originally a trade magazine editor. So I really, I think I'm a good client that way, because I never want to impede on the editorial content. I want the best content, and I want to ride on the coattails of that content.
It's hard for me to say what we'd pay for it. The publishers that have that kind of data are very siloed, and they really haven't been willing to connect all those dots for us, because I think they see it as sort of a back door at their revenue from the data side of their companies. We've always been willing to do exploratory projects with our publishers. And I'd like to say that, yeah, we'd be willing to pay for that. But you know how this goes. The problem is that's great when it's coming from me, but then there's this media buyer. Media buyers are kind of like purchasing agents. They eat their own young. They're rough people. And then so then you still have to negotiate with them. We still make you do that, and that's I wish I could tell you what we'd pay for it. But if we could connect it to sales, remember. A lot of B2B companies are like this, that they cannot connect their promotion to sales. If we could make that connection, that's like the silver bullet we've all been looking for to justify our existence and to justify our budgets.
Very good. Guys, are there relatively simple things that you think publishers should be doing that they really aren't? Marc, you had talked about the difficulty in your marketplace of working with publishers around digital, specifically around mobile. One of your publisher partners, they were going to launch a mobile website. They turned around and launched an app. Apps can be tricky. You can drop 25 grand on development for an app easy. Is there something that's simpler? If they pursued a responsive design or something else, is there something fairly simple that you'd like to see publishers doing that they aren't right now?
Yeah, it sounds simple. What you're saying sounds simple, and I think it's simple, but again, every time I mention something like this, they see the dollar signs, and they don't see another Marc Green in the wings ready to jump on the same bandwagon. So it's highly frustrating. We have one media partner that is a little bit more advanced than most, that can really track their readers. They can push some content, but they've got the weakest content. So again, why would I want to partner with them? I mean, I do partner with them, but why would I want to give them a disproportionate share of my spend when they don't have the strong content that's going to keep people coming back for more and more?
The segments that have been the most innovative have been the ones that have the tightest competition. For example, the automotive industry hasn't been nearly as innovative as commercial construction. Simply, at least that's the way it appears to us. I think it has to do with the competition and how they engage with their users and with their readers. I think that the way to develop innovation is you need, obviously how you need to get that through your clients, but in our case, it's really been the agency that has pushed us to try things that we never would have tried. We talk to publishers and they have all kinds of great ideas, but I'm reluctant because every dollar I put into something new and different is a dollar I've got to take away from something that's proven. And that's a scary thing for people like us that are, again, we're back to trying to justify our budgets and our existence. So that's a real scary place to be. But I think maybe the agencies can also help you with your clients if you have the benefit of working with, really good agencies that have good relations with their clients as well.
We've had a pretty digital-centric conversation so far, but you guys are both actually advocates of print. And our panelists have a question for you, the audience. How many of you still have print products? Show a sign of hands. So pretty much everybody here. For those of you with print products, are they still a significant portion of your business? You can just raise your hand to say yes or no. Okay.
Bless you.
Well,
so why? I mean, we hear so much from brands, it's almost the knee jerk. I want digital, I don't want print. Why? Why are you guys still advocates for print?
Well, if you look at who your reader is, who my customer is, for those of you who've been around more than a few years, and I use this example, there used to be two powerhouse magazines in the design engineering field, Machine Design, Design News, and they were, even before the computer publications came around, they were like almost phone book size. They were so popular. But then the design engineer who was using a CAD/CAM terminal, now it became a World Wide Web terminal, and since these folks never leave their computer, they're devouring all their media online. So those magazines really don't exist as print magazines. If your reader, my customer, is not at his or her computer all day, then print becomes the most portable, valuable medium for them. I mean, case in point, I look at my colleagues in the technical areas of our company, and they're exactly like our customers. As a matter of fact, I would say at least a third, if not half, of our technical staff have worked for our customers, and virtually everybody who leaves our technical crew goes to work for one of our customers. So I know their work habits. And they come in the morning, and they're going to quickly check email to see if there's something from a salesperson or a customer. And then the rest of the day, they're in a lab, they're in a kitchen, they're in a pilot plant, they're in a meeting, they're not at their computers. So that's why print in our industry is still strong. And if you serve any of those industries, so for example, plant management, those folks are never at their computers, they're out in the plant doing their job. Print is still strong in those areas. And again, even in areas that are analogous to ours, things like personal care. The formulating chemists in personal care are just like the formulators in food. They are never in front of their computer. They're in a lab, they're with a customer, they're doing something. So print is still really strong if people are not wedded to their computers all day. And I'm a big advocate of print.
Do you see that continuing going forward? Because that's something that we've seen in select verticals like agriculture. So just like you said, farmers, they're not in front of their computer all day. Most farmers don't even own tablets, but they do own cell phones, and we're seeing a lot of people texting to them. You're starting to see a new generation of farmer that's certainly still relying on print, but they're a little more digitally savvy.
I think you just picked the wrong industry. I was just with two of our growers in August, and their combines and their tractors are some of the most wired environments you ever want to see. I mean, they have tablets, they've got laptops, they're checking the weather, so that may not be the right industry. But I made this prediction. I've been, again, trying to, all the media reps that I deal with who still have kids to put through college, I give them this spiel because I want to see them make a living and be able to afford college. I thought that by now we'd all be using enterprise tablets, you know, but it's a little bit slower. But when that's going to come soon enough, and that's where we're going to see a sea change, I think, when everybody has their communication device, all their media are right in front of them on a, you know, on a tablet. I use as an example quite often. I was with a friend who was, he's a former art director, and he loves woodworking, so he's kind of made it into a little business. He does woodworking retouching, and you would think it's in old homes and whatever. Most of his business comes from new construction, where the contractors mess up all the woodwork. And we were in the most wired college facility in the United States. It's a pharmaceutical college connected with the University of North Carolina. It's kind of like a remote center, and so half of their learning is distance through TV, closed circuit, and some on, you know, resident faculty. And we were in the formulating lab, and he's working on this door for like an hour, and that's where they learn to do compounding. And here it is, the most wired college facility you'd ever see. And what's in the compounding lab on the shelves? Directory, 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 because that's where they're going to go. They're still going to print, even though in this wired environment. So that's going to change. Maybe not by today, but certainly soon, when everybody's going to have all their information on that tablet. They don't have to go running back to their desk. So,
Matt, if I might bump in, I don't think we can be so simplistic to say that maybe it's driven by age. Like, you know, there are all these chestnuts about, well, it's the people over or under this age. I don't think we can do that. And it's also, I don't think you can do it by someone's digital aptitude. You can look at certain industries, like we look at architects and say, oh, well, architects are very refined. They're very savvy tech users. But here's the question. Yes, we know that, but what are they using it for? And where are they accessing your product information? If it's not in one of those areas where they are data-driven or where they're technology-driven, you may find that print is still the best vehicle. So I think just asking them, you know, do you use a laptop? Do you use a mobile device? What mobile device do you use? You've really got to dig deeper to understand what they use it for and how they use it. With regard to your, I do this survey every other year with regard to my specific kinds of content, because I don't want to go and build an $80,000 app to find that they're not using their iPhone for product sourcing. That would be a major blunder. So I don't think we can be as simple as we want to make this. I think we do have to dig a little deeper. And for my audiences, you call me a dinosaur. I'm going to be 50 next month. Just said that for you. Child. Print builds brand. Online builds business. I see so many of my peers, some in my company, most outside of my company, who have abandoned print for online. And what they find is they're generating click-throughs, but I don't believe, I really question that they're truly building brand. And I just think we need to understand that these vehicles may actually be delivering different kinds of things and doing different kinds of functions with our audiences. I suspect your editorial teams know that pretty well. They probably can tell you what kinds of articles, what kinds of content plays better online than plays in print. I'm guessing. Yes? Maybe? Yeah, it does. And I wish I could tell you, we lean on our own survey data. We pay attention to the editorial content. We know where we fit. But it is much harder to justify a print budget than it is an online budget when you can point to this mountain of metrics. The problem is really trying to demonstrate for your managers what those metrics really mean.